Supergod, create Civilization 0. Kesha is stunned. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 Cruel Color. Their eyes radiated a sharp cold light, revealing an unparalleled domineering and sharpness, as if they were the masters of the world. Lu Xuan stared at the two stone statues. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his eyes flashed with brilliance. Chenyang's eyes widened, and he was surprised to find that there were two clusters of green ghost fire burning in Lu Xuan's eye sockets. Lu Xuan's mouth drew a strange arc, and he murmured, "It is exactly the same as my guess of 1073. Roar, 2. Shocking dragon roars suddenly sounded, exploding in the sea, and set off a storm. Chenyang lowered his head in horror, and he saw that the two stone statues actually moved. The palms of the stone statues stretched out together, waving their arms at the same time, grabbing towards the ocean. Chenyang was extremely frightened and quickly dodged, not daring to get close. Lu Xuan did not move at all, allowing the two huge stone statues to fall in front of him. Bang, bang, the loud noise shook the sea, the waves rolled, and the attack of the huge stone statues fell on the shore, where Lu Xuan stood, leaving one huge pit after another. Chenyang was surprised to see this, and he couldn't figure it out. Lu, why didn't Xuan resist? You know, even a 5-star sailor can't withstand such an attack. Even if Chenyang's strength increased several times, he would never dare to withstand such an attack. Master, why didn't you stop them? Chenyang asked in horror, his face pale and his whole body trembling. Lu Xuan smiled and said, I expected this to happen. Hearing this, Chenyang breathed a sigh of relief. He thought Lu Xuan had predicted the danger. Just when he was relieved, Lu Xuan's mouth showed a trace of coldness, saying, since they took the initiative to deliver it to the door, how can I refuse it? After that, Lu Xuan leaped into the air, waved his right hand gently, and two strands of green flames broke away from his palm and quickly floated towards the two huge stone statues. The two flames rotated rapidly, and in an instant they wrapped around the stone statues and burned fiercely. Sizzle. The pungent smell of burning spread, and the stone chips fell into the sea. Roar, roar. The two stone statues roared angrily and struggled desperately, but the flames were too hot, and they could not move. Chapter 77 A flick of the finger. As soon as the words fell, Lu Xuan flicked his fingers, and two green lights burst out from his fingertips. Bang, bang, two balls of emerald green flames burst instantly, and the terrifying energy wave swept across the entire sea area. Chenyang only felt that his chest was hit hard, and his throat was sweet and almost spurted blood. He covered his chest that was about to burst with pain, and looked at the scene in front of him in astonishment. After the two balls of emerald green flames exploded, the terrifying energy raged wildly, broke through the defense of the stone statue, and poured into the ocean. Roar. The miserable scream came from the depths of the ocean. The ocean rolled violently, and a more terrifying energy surged out from the bottom of the sea. This terrifying power seemed to come from an ancient giant beast, full of destructive breath, which was 21 terrified. Oh no, what is that? Chenyang was terrified and looked at the terrifying energy in horror. Lu Xuan frowned. A trace of solemnity flashed across his eyes, and said, I didn't expect that there are so many interesting guys in this world. It seems that there is no need to bother to hunt for treasures. After that, Lu Xuan flew to meet the terrifying energy. Chenyang stared at the distance in horror. He didn't know what Lu Xuan was going to do. Was he going to deal with that unknown monster? Hooah. La la. The raging wave swept like the end of the world, and the entire island was affected. The seabed cracked, and the mountains collapsed. Chenyang stood in the distance. His face was a 10, and he couldn't help at all. Boom. Lu Xuan opened his hands, and a huge sword appeared, releasing a vast breath like the sea, shocking the world. Suppress it for me, Lu Xuan shouted softly, holding the giant sword and slashing down. Sure. Chapter 78 Seeking Trouble. Huh. Trash. Hearing this, Chenyang was stunned. He looked at the black stone ball in his hand, and said with a sad face, Master, this is trash. Lu Xuan curled his lips and said, could it be a fairy weapon? Yang smiled awkwardly and said awkwardly, "Master, you have a good eye for pearls. These are indeed trash, but aren't you afraid that you will not be able to continue refining them if you throw them away?" I so stupid. Lu Xuan rolled his eyes at Chen Yang and was too lazy to pay attention to him and walked straight into the depths of the cave. Alas. Master is worthy of being the master. So amazing. Chen Yang flattered him and hurried to catch up. The cave is very wide and extends all the way to the depths of the cave. Not long after, the two stopped. In the center of the cave, there stood a huge stone tablet. The stone tablet is dark red, and the surface is covered with strange runes and patterns. These patterns and runes emit strange and evil energy fluctuations, which still make people feel suffocated even from a distance. Such a strong energy. Lu Xuan frowned. He could clearly feel that the energy fluctuations emitted by the stone tablet were completely superior to the spiritual energy. Master, you don't know that this is an ancient evil tomb, burying ancient powerful people, Chen Yang explained. Lu Xuan was surprised. Ancient evil tomb? Buried ancient evil demons? That's right. This stone tablet is called the Sealing Spirit Stone Tablet. It contains powerful power and is said to be a treasure, Chen Yang said. The door of the ancient evil tomb has been destroyed by me, which should be considered a success. Lu Xuan said lightly. Then he walked towards the stone tablet. Crack. Suddenly, there was a crisp sound under his feet, and the floor broke apart, revealing a crack. What's going on? Lu Xuan was suspicious, looked down, and was stunned. I saw a half-meter high wooden box lying quietly in the crack. Lu Xuan picked up the wooden box and held it up. It was heavy and obviously had some weight. Chapter 79. Be honest. How shameless. The woman said contemptuously. Although she was wearing a veil, Lu Xuan could still tell from her eyes that she was not very old. She was so young, but had the strength of the peak of the Saint Realm, which was enough to prove that she had excellent talent and was a rare top genius in the world. I admit that you are very talented, but in my eyes, you are always just an ant. Lu Xuan said disdainfully. "And?" The woman sneered, with a strong fighting spirit in her eyes, and said, "I don't believe it. Since you are stubborn, then get hurt." Lu Xuan waved her hand and summoned the blood sword energy, rushing towards the opposite side of 06. Blood sword energy. When the woman saw the scarlet, her pupils shrank suddenly, and then her eyes flashed with excitement, saying, "I have waited for more than 1,000 years, and finally I have waited." Eru. The woman's figure disappeared from the spot like teleportation. At the same time, the blood sword energy flew out and hit a transparent barrier. Boom. Instantly, a violent energy exploded, and the deafening sound spread throughout the valley. Shocking. The surrounding mountain walls collapsed and fell, forming billowing smoke and dust. So fast. CBDJ. Lu Xuan's heart trembled, feeling a little oppressive. This woman's speed was too fast, and it was impossible to defend against it. At this moment, a stream of sharp ice blue energy shot out through the air, like a meteor shower falling. Frost arrow. Lu Xuan's face changed slightly, his palms turned, and he used the frost sword technique. Bang, bang. In an instant, groups of ice crystals condensed into arrows and collided with dense energy. 2 Terrifying strong winds swept over, causing the surrounding rock walls to crack. In a moment, the fight between the two reached a fever pitch. Lu Xuan's strength was not inferior to that of the woman, but he vaguely felt that the opponent's fighting skills were more proficient. Chapter 80. The Prophet of the Fisherman. HMPH. Chen Yang snorted coldly, and a surge of anger rose in his heart. He said, "If you have the guts, let's fight alone. What kind of hero is it to rely on sneak attacks? I'm not a hero. I just know that I must get rid of you as soon as possible." The woman said coldly. ****HOLE. Chen Yang cursed, wishing he could slap this woman a few times. Of course, he didn't dare to do that. After all, he would be killed if he lost. They were speeding at the bottom of the deep magma, and the temperature rose as they went forward. This is a lava lake, filled with terrifying energy, and you will be burned to ashes if you are not careful, Lu Xuan whispered. "Lava lake?" Chen Yang frowned and said, "How come I haven't heard of this ghost place?" Lu Xuan shrugged and said, "I haven't been here either, and I don't know what this place is." It's probably in ancient ruins or something like that. The two people's conversation attracted the attention of the woman. She paused and said coldly, "What are you discussing?" "Nothing." Lu Xuan smiled faintly. "Don't pretend." The woman snorted coldly, "There must be something in this lava lake, but it should have been absorbed by me. Don't even think about snatching it." Lu Xuan raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Are you sure you have really absorbed it? Stop talking nonsense. Those who want to snatch things from me, go to see the king of hell." The woman said in a cold tone, as if she could explode at any time. "I don't plan to snatch it from you." Lu Xuan shrugged, ignored her, and continued on his way. Chapter 81 Following close lie. Whether it is or not, let's go in and take a look first. Lu Xuan stepped into the cave, and the woman followed closely. The cave was not spacious, and many luminous stones were inlaid on the walls on both sides, so that the corridor was not completely dark. Lu Xuan walked deeper into the corridor, and gradually, the temperature of the corridor increased. Boom. Suddenly, the whole cave shook, and then there was a deafening 293 explosion. Someone is attacking the mountain protection formation of the cave. Lu Xuan frowned. "Don't worry, the mountain protection formation is extremely tough. It will never be damaged without 100 years. The woman said indifferently. "Ah, you sure?" Lu Xuan asked. "Well, but..." The woman hesitated for a while, and suddenly changed her words, saying, "But if someone is helping outside, the situation is not optimistic." "Oh," Lu Xuan said with interest, "who is so powerful?" "Not powerful, but terrifying." The woman sneered. "So exaggerated." Lu Xuan became more interested. "I tell you, you must not leak any information." The woman said solemnly, "I once met that guy and almost died." Lu Xuan was slightly startled, and hurriedly asked, "Who is it? Why is it so terrifying?" "He is called the Baron, the leader of the 3 demon kings of the Northern Territory Principality, and he is notorious." "Demon King?" Lu Xuan was stunned, and couldn't help asking, "What is this title?" "The so-called Demon King is the controller of the 3 major forces in the Northern Territory Principality." The woman said, "He has unparalleled strength, and is said to have reached the nascent soul realm." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Extremely Alert. "Okay, stop arguing." The man stopped him, saying, "We all have the same goal. Let's work together to kill the demon baron first." After hearing this, Lu Xuan nodded. "What about you?" Lu Xuan looked at the woman. "Do you think I'm a coward who is afraid of threats?" The woman asked back. "Okay, let's go." Lu Xuan nodded and took the lead to walk out of the cave. The woman followed closely. "Who are you, and why are you here?" As soon as he went out, he saw a group of soldiers in armor blocking his way. These soldiers were all wearing gold and silver armor, and their chests were full of various metals. Obviously, they were all members of the Royal Guard. "Get out," the man shouted coldly. Everyone looked terrified and hurriedly stepped back, making way for a path leading to the end of the valley. 21 Lu Xuan looked at the woman and asked, "Which family are you from?" "Star Academy, Emokinglian." The woman said lightly. Lu Xuan was startled and said, "It turns out that she is the granddaughter of Old Man Mo. No wonder she is so arrogant." Old Man Mo. Old Man Mo is the second best player in Bihei County City, at the peak of the 9th level of the mortal realm, and only half a step away from the nascent soul realm. Humph. The woman glanced at him and said sarcastically, "Aren't you just as arrogant?" Ahem. Lu Xuan coughed awkwardly a few times and said, "Well, I'm innocent." "Stop talking nonsense. Take me to the entrance of the cave," the woman urged. Lu Xuan nodded and said, "Okay, let's go." Soon, the two of them passed through the corridor and reached the end of the valley behind the mountain. "It's right in front." Lu Xuan pointed forward. In front of them, there was a dark blue light curtain. "Ah, you sure it's here?" Emokinglian frowned. "Don't worry, I can guarantee it." Lu Xuan said affirmatively. "I want to see how reliable your guarantee is." Mo Kinglian sneered, then stretched out his hand and pressed on the dark blue light curtain. Buzz. In an instant, the dark blue light curtain lit up and a strange wave spread out. Crack, crack, accompanied by the sound of shattering that resounded through the sky. The dark blue light curtain that was several feet wide slowly opened a gap. Chapter 83. Calming down. Be careful. Zyro, whose voice came from his mind. Lu Xuan nodded slightly and said, I know. Although he has the strength of the 7th level of Huafan, he dare not relax at all and move forward cautiously. Suddenly, he stopped and narrowed his eyes right in front of him. Mo Kinglian stood under a stone tablet. This stone tablet should be the key to the location of the spiritual crystal vein. Lu Xuan muttered to himself and walked forward slowly. Stop. Mo Kinglian noticed the movement and immediately turned her head to see Lu Xuan. Her pretty face suddenly turned cold and she scolded, Are you going to die? Lu Xuan ignored her, bypassed the stone tablet, and walked straight into the cave. ****hole. Mo Kinglian roared, drew his sword, and chased after him. Lu Xuan's speed was very fast. After a while, he reached the entrance of the cave. Sure enough, there is no danger. Lu Xuan breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Boy, stop. Mo Kinglian shouted angrily and flashed in front of Lu Xuan. Something? Lu Xuan asked. You want to go in? Mo Kinglian frowned and said, Tell you, no one can go in without my permission. Lu Xuan curled his lips and said, Can't you go in by yourself? Do you think I'm as timid as you? Mo Kinglian scolded. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being rude. How do you want to be rude? Lu Xuan smiled with interest. I will use the sword in my hand to pierce your throat. Mo Kinglian smiled grimly. You try? Lu Xuan spread his palms. Chapter 84. Cliffs. After saying that, Mo Kinglian turned around and continued to move forward. This woman is really haunting. Lu Xuan muttered. Zyro, do you think she is lying to me? Lu Xuan asked in a voice transmission. No, I believe in the master's judgment. Since you can successfully pass the formation restriction, it means that you are indeed capable and may be able to mine spiritual crystals from here. Zyro said in a voice transmission. I hope so. Lu Xuan shrugged his shoulders and continued to follow. The cave was very long. After half an hour, Lu Xuan and the others walked out of the cave. What came into view was a long tunnel with various fluorescent stones on both sides. Mo Kinglian pointed to the end of the tunnel and said, That's where the spiritual crystal vein is. 247. What's in it? Lu Xuan asked. A 3rd level peak monster guarding it. Mo Kinglian stared at the tunnel ahead and said, 3rd level peak monster? Lu Xuan was slightly stunned. Well, Mo Kinglian nodded and said, Its name is Phantom Wolf King. It has the ability to hide and is good at sneak attacks. Even the 9th level mentors of the mortal realm may not be its opponents. After a pause, Mo Kinglian added, Of course, the Phantom Wolf King was just bluffing. Now it is dying. Lu Xuan nodded and said, Then go in quickly. Don't let it live for long. Wait. Mo Kinglian stretched out his hand to stop Lu Xuan and explained, The Phantom Wolf King has a weakness, that is, it is afraid of fire. Hearing this, Lu Xuan suddenly realized that this cunning Phantom Wolf King was actually a flame creature. Do you have a way to kill it? Lu Xuan asked. Don't worry, leave it to me. Mo Kinglian said confidently. Lu Xuan nodded slightly and said, Okay, let's go. Mo Kinglian formed a seal with her jade hands, and a wisp of white flame rose up, illuminating the entire space and dispelling the fog. Swoosh. Chapter 85. Blowing in. The wind whistled and blew. Where is this? Mo Kinglian looked around, her face pale, obviously scared. At this time, she suddenly thought of Xuan and couldn't help looking up. Her face instantly turned extremely pale. Seeing that guy standing in front of her, looking down at her from a high position. Mo Kinglian's pretty face was pale and bloodless, and even breathing became extremely difficult, as if a 1,000-pound stone was pressing on her heart, making it difficult to breathe. Why are you here? Mo Kinglian asked tremblingly. Her only thought now was to leave here. Do you know where this is? Lu Xuan didn't answer her words and directly changed the subject. This is King Mu Forest. Mo Kinglian replied. How strong are the monsters here? Lu Xuan asked. There are many monsters of the 5th and 6th levels of the mortal level, and there are 2 or 3 monsters of the 8th level of the mortal level, and even a phantom wolf king of the 9th level of the mortal level. Vertical bar Zen. King Lian said truthfully. Hearing this, Lu Xuan's face became slightly solemn, and he said in deep thought, if I guess correctly, this is probably the entrance to the spiritual crystal vein, MO. King Lian was doubtful and asked, what do you want to do? Chapter 86, Soul Flies Away. Lu Xuan took a deep breath, held the blue giant sword, stabbed it into the body of the phantom wolf king, and then pulled it out suddenly. Buff. Blood spurted out and splashed on Lu Xuan. Roar. The phantom wolf king roared, opened his scholar eyes, and roared angrily. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A group of phantom wolf kings rushed over quickly, opened their fangs and claws, and bit them. The fishy smell was nauseating. Bus 057 bus. Suddenly, Lu Xuan held the blue giant sword and danced a sword flower. The sharp sword light surged, tearing the air, and cut off a group of phantom wolf kings. Huh. Lu Xuan looked at Mo King Lian in surprise and asked, you won't tell me that you can't defend against the enemy, Mo? King Lian's pretty face turned pale, and said, although I have a trace of frost body, I'm good at fighting. Your strength has reached the peak of the early stage of Tangshan realm, plus the increase of frost body. It is enough to rival the peak of the middle stage of Tangshan realm. Lu Xuan shook his head and said helplessly, forget it. I will teach you the art of resisting enemies after I have dealt with all the phantom wolf kings. Swish. Lu Xuan stepped out with a blue giant sword in his hand, like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, wreaking havoc. Ice. Dragon twist. Ice. Cage. Lu Xuan shouted, and the blue giant sword flashed with dazzling light, dazzling and dazzling. With one sword, the blue sword light turned into a ferocious and domineering ice dragon, roaring and rushing towards the group of phantom wolf kings. Bang bang bang. The ice dragon rushed over, and the phantom wolf kings were frozen and smashed into a pool of mud along the way. In just a few breaths, Lu Xuan had killed nearly 20 phantom wolf kings. Seeing that the situation was not good, the remaining phantom wolf kings evacuated one after another. Chapter 87. Moving forward. Roar. However, the skeleton ignored him and stared at Mo King Lian, making a cold roar. Damn. Xuan, where are you? Come and save me. Mo King Lian screamed in fear. However, the only response was the eerie sound of the wind and the strange footsteps of the skeleton slowly crawling towards her. Mo King Lian was shocked and frightened, and rushed deeper into the cave in a panic. The skeleton roared, and instantly rushed to Mo King Lian's side, punching her head. Mo King Lian was so scared that she was scared to death, and quickly raised her knife to block. Clang. Sparks flew, and a violent force burst out. Mo King Lian was bounced away and staggered back several steps. The skeleton was slightly startled, and it seemed that he didn't expect Mo King Lian to react so quickly and be able to resist. Who? Mo King Lian panted heavily and looked at the skeleton in astonishment. Mo King Lian had just narrowly avoided a fatal blow and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, feeling a little relaxed. Roar. At this moment, the skeleton attacked again, bringing with it a strong smell of fishy wind and stench, which made Zen King Lian's eyebrows show a trace of disgust. HMPH. Mo King Lian snorted contemptuously, and his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. The next moment, he appeared behind the skeleton and stabbed the skeleton's spine with a sword. Swish. The cold light flashed, and the sword cut through the air, making a piercing whistle. The skeleton sensed the crisis and hurriedly turned around and clawed out, trying to block the attack. Chapter 88. Encounter on the road. At the same time, a majestic palace complex occupied an area of several hundred miles. Boom. Deafening explosions, accompanied by a monstrous bloodlight, made the palace tremble continuously, as if it could collapse at any time. Outside the palace, thousands of Saint Emperor peak powerhouses gathered here, each of them staring at the enemy, ready to fight. Inside the palace, a stone tablet hundreds of feet long stood quietly, and on the surface of the stone tablet, a trace of blood flowed down the rock wall. The surface of the blood-colored rock was engraved with countless complex veins, exuding an ancient and vicissitudes of life, and faintly had blood mist rose up. Quite creepy. Over the years, Countless strong men have been searching for treasures one after another, but all have returned empty-handed, which has led to their discouragement and preparations to retreat. Suddenly, everyone's pupils condensed, and they all looked in the direction of the sound. I saw a familiar figure stepping out of the valley, and wherever he passed, he raised billowing smoke and dust, like a roaring dragon. Hiss. What a terrifying breath. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. Don't care. Lu Xuan shrugged nonchalantly, and then changed the subject. Hurry up and lead the way. Emo Kinglian rolled her eyes and said, how do I know if you are lying to me? Do you think I need to lie to you? Lu Xuan asked back. No. Emo Kinglian smiled slyly. What do you think? Lu Xuan shrugged and asked back. Looking at the bickering mode of the two, everyone couldn't help but laugh. It seems that this legendary genius equals Yang. Seeing this, Emo Kinglian also sighed lightly and shook her head and said, you are awesome. Of course she understood that Lu Xuan didn't need to lie to her at all, not to mention that he had saved her life. Immediately, Emo Kinglian took a step and walked towards the depths of the forest. Lu Xuan and more than 990 Saint Emperor Peak powerhouses followed closely behind. The group traveled through the densely forested mountains and forests in a mighty manner. It took 3 days and finally arrived at a canyon. In the canyon, there were many large raptors. Their size was comparable to that of a first-level spiritual beast. The terrain in the canyon was extremely complex, with vines, thorns and other plants all around, and the space was narrow and gloomy. At the foot of the mountain, there were ancient trees growing, about 100 feet high, with lush branches and leaves and branches and boards growing horizontally. The surface of the ancient tree was surrounded by rich green energy, which was obviously poisonous. CBCJ, such a strong wood attribute power. This tree must have grown for hundreds of thousands of years. Emo Kinglian said in surprise. It is worthy of being the underworld. Even spiritual medicine can grow for so long. It's really enviable, said a Saint Emperor Peak Master. Another Saint Emperor Peak Master nodded in agreement and said, if this ancient tree can be transplanted and placed in the family, it will definitely bring endless benefits to the family. Chapter 90. A little carelessness. Thank you. Emo Kinglian looked at Lu Xuan gratefully, and then disappeared on the spot. Brother, Lu's luck is really against the sky. He got a wooden spirit bead as soon as he entered the netherworld. Yes, I heard that the wooden spirit bead is a rare treasure, priceless. With the wooden spirit bead, Lu Xuan's strength will increase again. Hey, let's follow Sister Emo and drink the soup. The other Peak Saint Emperors were full of envy. The wood spirit orb Lu Xuan got was richer than the resources allocated to each of them. Lu Xuan ignored the whispers of the crowd and left the place directly, continuing to the ruins of the Nether Palace. As he went deeper, the dangers in the forest became more and more terrifying. He often encountered a group of first-level spirit beasts, and many strong men were buried here. A towering palace stood in the canyon, as if it had never changed. The palace gate was open, and there was a faint cold wind blowing in, making the whole hall look cold and damp, which was creepy. Inside the gate was a bright and dark tunnel, like the bloody mouth of an ancient giant. That is the ruins of the Nether Palace. Emo Kinglian raised his hand and pointed to the end of the dark tunnel and said in a low voice, yeah. Lu Xuan nodded and walked towards the dark tunnel first. My friend Lu Xuan, I advise you not to barge in. Suddenly, Emo Kinglian's voice rang out. Oh, why? Lu Xuan paused and turned back in confusion. Emo Kinglian explained, according to my guess, this tunnel should have been set up by a powerful person. If the ban is triggered, it will inevitably suffer a strong backlash. So, what? It's just a formation. It can't be difficult for me. Lu Xuan waved his hand, looking nonchalant. As soon as he finished speaking, a sharp and piercing scream suddenly sounded, making people's scalps numb. That's the sound of monster. Emo Kinglian frowned slightly, staring at the depths of the tunnel, with a hint of surprise in her beautiful eyes. At the same time, everyone drew their swords and prepared for battle. Chapter 91. A trial. If I hadn't met Lu Xuan and the others, I might have to pay a heavy price, even if I pass the test point. Compared to Emo Kingan's surprise and luck, Emo Kinglian and the others looked indifferent, as if all this was justified point, because with their strength, they can completely crush these monsters. Although the strength of these spirit beasts is generally low, their number is frightening. If it continues, even we are in danger of falling. 4, 5, 0. Looking at the dense monster corpses, Emo Kinglian frowned slightly and solemnly warned, "Little friend Lu Xuan, you will lead the team to act later. Once you find something abnormal, retreat immediately, otherwise even I can't save you." Emo Kinglian gave a word, then took a step forward, took out a golden longsword, and exuded a vast wave. Point clang. Clang clang point as her arm shook, the dazzling golden light spread and turned into sharp sword energy, whistling around her. What? A sharp breath. Noticing Emo Kinglian's actions, Lu Xuan was surprised and couldn't help but praise. Point not only Lu Xuan, but everyone present was also stunned, surprised by Emo Kinglian's strength. This woman's strength is even better than that man in white. Who is she? She seems very strange, and I have never seen her in the netherworld. Her aura is very terrifying. I'm afraid she has reached the peak of the Saint King realm. Everyone was amazed. Point the strength displayed by Emo Kinglian shocked everyone and made them feel oppressive. Point Emo Kinglian ignored everyone's thoughts, inserted the golden sword into the ground, and quickly formed seals with both hands. But as Emo Kinglian formed seals, a violent gust of wind immediately rose within a radius of hundreds of meters, gathering into a tornado vortex. Chapter 92. Deep Accomplishments. Could it be that he has ancient blood? Looking at Emo Kingan's back, everyone talked about it with shocked expressions. Hearing the discussion beside him, Lu Xuan ignored it and continued to focus on dealing with the monsters. Seeing Lu Xuan's reaction, Emo Kinglian shook his head and said, "Let's hurry up and take this opportunity to hunt some monsters." Okay. Emo Wenli and others nodded, followed Emo Kinglian and others, and continued to seek ways to pass the level. There is a passage leading to the underground here. Emo Kinglian and others followed the map instructions and came to a huge underground palace. Point looking at the towering stone gate in front, everyone stopped and scanned the surroundings nervously. Is there any danger behind these 21 stone gates? Emo Kingan asked curiously, looking eager to try. Point. As soon as Emo Kingan asked, Emo Kinglian smiled playfully and said, "If you want to go in, just try." Point. Seeing Emo Kinglian say this, Emo Kingan did not hesitate anymore and prepared to walk to the front of the stone gate. Wait a minute. Seeing that Emo Kingan was about to approach the stone gate, Lu Xuan called him. Point. Hearing Lu Xuan's shout, Emo Kingan turned to look at him and asked, "What's wrong?" Since it is an assessment, there will definitely be many obstacles. Lu Xuan had a slightly serious expression and explained in a serious tone, and then said, "I will go in and explore first. Point. If it is confirmed to be correct, I will allow you to enter the stone gate." Point. Hearing Lu Xuan's suggestion, Emo Kingan nodded in agreement and was no longer in a hurry to go up. Point. While Emo Kingan and the other two were talking, Emo Wenli and others had dispersed and groped towards the mountain walls on both sides under the search of Emo Wenli and others. They all gained something, and expressions of joy appeared on their faces. "Let's take action too." Looking at everyone's actions, Lu Xuan called out and walked towards the stone gate. First. Point. When he came to the front of the stone gate, Lu Xuan did not hesitate at all and stretched out his hand to push the stone gate. Point. Click, click, click. Chapter 93. So that's it. Emo Kinglian did not refuse Emo Kingan's request and immediately took the array disc. Is that so? Under Emo Kingan's gaze, a faint smile appeared on Emo Kinglian's pretty face. Point. Immediately, Emo Kinglian raised her hand and pinched her fingers to deduce the array pattern. Point. After a while, Emo Kinglian stopped pinching and took down the array disc and put it on the ground. Is it over? Seeing Emo Kinglian take down the array disc, Emo Kingan asked eagerly. Point. In response to Emo Kingan's question, Emo Kinglian shook her head and said, "Although the position of the array has been deduced, there are still some problems that have not been solved. It is difficult to crack it in a short time." "Oh, there is such a thing." Knowing Emo Kinglian's answer. Emo Kingan showed a curious face and questioned her words, asking, according to what you said, you have just cracked it. Why do you say it is difficult to crack? I did crack it. Hearing Emo Kingan's doubts, Emo Kinglian smiled and said, but the array patterns I cracked can only be regarded as the simplest level 1. The real array cannot be cracked at all. Chapter 94. Although scarce. Hearing Lu Xuan's words, Emo Kingan was stunned and looked dazed. Seeing Emo Kingan's performance, Lu Xuan smiled and shook his head, saying, don't play dumb. You know your physical condition. If you don't refine the Jade Talisman as soon as possible, the delay will be too long. I'm afraid it will have a great impact on your injury. After Lu Xuan finished speaking, Emo Kingan no longer hesitated and walked quickly to the depths of the square. Lu Xuan was right. Now he was seriously injured, and his strength was seriously reduced. Therefore, if you want to search for treasures here, it is safer to refine and suppress the formation as soon as possible. Looking at Emo Kingan's back, Emo Kinglian frowned and reminded him anxiously, saying, be careful. There are some restrictions on these pillars, and you will be backlashed if you are not careful. Thank you. Hearing Emo Kinglian's caring words, Emo Kingan responded politely and continued to move forward. When he came near the stone pillars, Emo Kingan continued to move forward without stopping. Emo Kingan did not encounter any crisis along the way and had a smooth journey. How could this happen? Seeing this scene, Emo Kinglian widened her beautiful eyes, her face full of surprise. In her opinion, even if Emo Kingan was lucky and walked smoothly all the way to now. But if you want to cross these stone pillars, you still need to spend a certain price. But Emo Kingan was an exception, as if these stone samples did not exist. This situation was too weird, making her feel like she had no idea where to start. Emo Kinglian's head was a little confused, and her thinking could not keep up with the rhythm. She couldn't help muttering to herself, what is going on? Did he resist it with his body, or did he use some secret technique to block the pressure of these stone pillars? A series of questions came up, and Emo Kinglian couldn't figure out which way was more reliable. Forget it. Forget it if you can't figure it out. Just follow him. After thinking for a long time and still not being able to figure it out, Emo Kinglian simply gave up the idea and followed Kinkwashiki forward. After a while. Chapter 95. The Chosen One. That's true. With his talent and trump card, he really doesn't need space power to advance to the Saint Venerable realm. It seems that my guess is wrong. Seeing Emo Kingan's actions, everyone shook their heads and sighed, despising his behavior under the contemptuous eyes of everyone. Emo Kingan quickened his pace and walked towards the stone wall. Looking at Emo Kingan, who looked relaxed and unconcerned, everyone was envious and jealous immediately. They felt a sense of regret. If they had known this, they should have taken the lead. However, it was useless to regret it now, so they had to wait for the result obediently. Bang. A dull sound suddenly came from under Emo Kingan's feet. Then, Emo Kingan's body was lifted up and fell to the ground. After knocking Emo Kingan away, a ball of flame emitting golden light emerged from the ground. What is this? Looking at the flame that suddenly appeared, Lu Xuan and others were all stunned. They didn't expect that there was such a thing hidden under the ground of this stone gate. This is the 9-flavored true flame. After a brief shock, Emo Kinglian's pretty face turned pale, and she trembled with fear for Emo Kinglian's performance. Everyone was not surprised at all, knowing that she was scared. After all, the reputation of the 9-flavored true flame was too strong. The 9-flavored true flame. This kid is so lucky. Lu Xuan curled his lips, showing an expression of envy and jealousy. Although he wanted to fight for it, he knew that he couldn't do it with his strength. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. Ignore. Emo Kingan ignored Emo Kinglian's complaints, smiled faintly at the flames on the ground, and said, the mechanism of this stone chamber is opened because of this flame. Maybe we can try to control it. Okay. Emo King Lian nodded in agreement. With Emo King Lian's agreement, Emo King Lian did not hesitate and immediately attacked Jiume's iron point. Although Jiume's iron is powerful, it is only 65-7 under Emo King Lian's attack point buff. In a moment, Jiume's iron was blasted away by Emo King Lian point without the protection of Jiume's iron. The stone door next to it opened automatically. Seeing the stone door open, Lu Xuan and others looked expectant and quickly walked into the stone door. Entering the stone chamber, Lu Xuan and others were dumbfounded. After they entered the stone chamber, the picture in their minds was completely opposite to what they expected. The stone chamber was empty, nothing was left, as if nothing had happened. What's going on? There should be a stone door where we came in. Looking at the empty room, Lu Xuan widened his eyes, feeling confused and puzzled. Seeing this, Emo King Lian's eyebrows slightly raised, a faint smile appeared on his face, and he said, I think I already know the answer. Oh. Hearing Emo King Lian's words, everyone's expression was happy, and they all looked at him expectantly. Glancing at everyone, Emo King Lian shifted his gaze and pointed to the giant monument in the center of the stone room. When Emo King Lian looked at the giant monument, Lu Xuan and others turned their heads and looked at the giant monument. Hey, it's strange. Where is the giant monument? Chapter 98. Ignore. In response to Emo King Lian's inquiry, everyone shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. Brother Emo, do you have any way to help us comprehend the eternal burning immortal technique? In response to Emo King Lian's inquiry, Lu Xuan showed a soliciting expression, hoping that Emo King Lian would help. Hearing Lu Xuan's request, Emo King Lian hesitated for a moment and finally nodded, saying, you can try it. Emo King Lian was still very eager for the eternal burning immortal technique and was ready to try it. Thank you. Seeing Emo King Lian's actions, Lu Xuan bowed his hands in gratitude and then looked at the others and said, everyone immerses their souls in the practice of the eternal burning immortal technique. Hearing this, everyone immersed their souls in the eternal burning immortal technique according to what Lu Xuan said. Emo King Lian was no exception. He immersed his soul in the eternal burning immortal technique and began to comprehend the eternal burning immortal technique. After a while, Emo King Lian fell into a deep level of comprehension and a raging flame ignited on his body. As Emo King Lian immersed himself in it, the flames on his body began to emit dazzling golden light. This change immediately frightened Lu Xuan, who quickly stepped aside to observe. Looking at Emo King Lian's current posture, he should be comprehending the essence of the eternal burning immortal art. About half an hour later, but accompanied by a strange wave emanating from Emo King Lian's body, his figure gradually solidified. Chapter 99. Eyes shift. Looking around, there are iron chains everywhere, each of which is hundreds of feet long. The other end of the iron chain extends in different directions. When seeing these iron chains, Lin Mu and others' expressions immediately tensed up, and their bodies trembled. From the momentum emanating from these iron chains, they clearly felt that each iron chain contained extremely terrifying pressure. These iron chains are very strange. Let's join forces to resist it. After recognizing the iron chains, Lu Xuan no longer hesitated and immediately reminded everyone. As soon as Lu Xuan's words fell, he activated the sword domain and blessed everyone. Sword domain. What a powerful sword domain. As expected of a disciple of Xianyu Demon Palace, he really has a set feeling. The sword domain on Lu Xuan's body, Emo King Lian and others admired. Although the sword domain displayed by Lu Xuan did not reach the ultimate perfection, it was already very good. At least it was much stronger than Lin Mu and others, enough for them to look up to. Seeing Lu Xuan's performance, Emo King Lian couldn't help but sigh that Xuan's potential was indeed strong enough. At the beginning, if he hadn't met Yu Wuya and others, his chances of defeating Lu Xuan would definitely not exceed 50%. Lu Xuan released the sword domain, and he didn't hesitate, and immediately approached the iron chain. When he came to the edge of the iron chain, Lu Xuan took out the 9-dragon sword and slashed out a sword light. Boom. The sword light flew over and instantly cut the 2 iron chains, making a deafening sound. The 2 iron chains were cut off, and a black token fell out from the gap in the iron chain. This token is the blood essence of a Saint Emperor monster. Primary Saint Blood Essence. Chapter 100. No rejection. This half-step saintly strongman should be the owner of this palace. We can't understand the words on these stone tablets. Look, there are some patterns carved on the back of those words apostrophe. Looking at the patterns on the stone tablet, Emo Kingan and others were surprised and discussed the secrets of the stone tablet. Everyone observed the patterns on the stone tablet. Emo Kingan narrowed his eyes and had an excited expression. He said, I finally understand that these patterns are not real scrolls, but some special magical powers. After Emo Kingan finished speaking, he couldn't wait to try to understand the contents of the stone tablet. Emo Kingan tried to comprehend the stone tablet, and he found that he had underestimated the extraordinariness of these stone tablets. The patterns on these stone tablets actually contain spatial power. The patterns of these spatial power are very similar to the spatial rules I master. It seems that the patterns of these spatial rules should be related to space indium. After some research, Emo Kingan had a deeper understanding of the secrets of the stone tablet. When Emo Kingan was surprised, he suddenly thought of something and said in surprise, these lines contain spatial rules, which may be related to Gu Yang, because I have learned Gu Yang skills. I don't know how Gu Yang is now. I hope he can survive this disaster safely. Thinking of Gu Yang's current situation, Emo Kingan showed a worried expression. During Emo Kingan's conversation, he understood the information in the stone tablet more and more deeply. So that's it. After finding out the origin of the stone tablet, Emo Kingan's expression became serious and his mood became solemn. He said, it seems that we will have a fierce battle in this underground palace exploration trip. 11 brother, what should we do? Hearing Emo Kingan's suggestion, everyone looked at each other, looking at a loss in response to everyone's questions. Lu Xuan was silent for a while before making a decision, saying, since these people want to kill for money, let's play with them and kill them first. Lu Xuan's idea was simple, to kill them all while the enemy was not paying attention. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.